so one area that we are going to delve into and discuss a little more is some of the financials. So you'll see a few financial videos coming up talking about different aids and investing and things that you can do to prepare ahead of time, and then what happens if you encounter a death and you are financially strapped. So we're going to try and cover a few different areas of this. The first that I'm going to talk about today is what's called state funded, or you may hear it called DHS, which is the Department of Human Services, or FIA, Family Independence Agency. So every state has a different name for their agency that helps in times of need. So you would go to that same place to get put on healthcare aid or on food stamps or any type of aid like that. So if you have worked with those organizations, then you are familiar with them. You have a social worker, so you kind of know what I'm talking about. Now, this is going to be something, if somebody has previously been set up with the social worker for this, then you might be able to get some assistance for burial or cremation when the time comes through your state or through the county, because a lot of it is actually divvied out per county that they give this assistance. So I've got some notes, and I'm going to be looking at my notes. This is one of those areas that I want to make sure I'm saying exactly the right things. So if the person that died was not on assistance previously, then you're not going to get assistance at the time of death. In 99.9% of the case, because if they were receiving assistance, that means they needed assistance. If they weren't, then they didn't need it previously, so they're not going to get it now, because when it comes to burial and death benefits through the state, they're even stricter than any other benefits you can receive when you're alive. Now, every state is going to be different. There are some states who offer no assistance. Some offer a little bit of assistance. There's a lot of hoops to jump through, and so a lot of families just say, oh, screw it. We're not even going to apply for the, couple $100 because it's not worth everything we have to do to try and get that couple $100. So it's all up to you. You have to do the work. You have to put in the effort, and you have to also, in most cases, pay the matching fund. So a lot of it, the state won't pay a portion until you've paid your portion. So there's a lot of stipulations. I've got a few different states that I'm going to give you kind of an overview of what they do. But every state, like I said, is different. So you're going to have to look into what your state does. So there's also where a family says, we're not taking care of them. We don't have the finances. We kind of are going to wash our hands of that person. And the person is left unclaimed at the hospital, at the medical examiner's office, at the morgue. Sometimes it happens when they've already gotten to the funeral home and the family won't return phone calls. So then the funeral home has to call in the medical examiner to kind of be part of it and to deem the body unclaimed. And this does happen more than you think, because some people don't have funds and they don't want to take care of the person. There's just some people out there that don't have family, that don't have loved ones to take care of them, or the family doesn't want to take care of them because they were not a good person. So there's a lot of situations, unfortunately, but it is reality. So what happens then is, in different states there's different, or even counties, they may have different rules for unclaimed bodies. Some of them get buried at the pauper cemetery. There might be one cemetery that's specified for burials for unclaimed bodies. They may do a cremation and then, bury or scatter those cremated remains of the unclaimed bodies. So it just depends on what the method is in that county, in that state, for unclaimed bodies. But the family does not get a say. The family does not get to be there for a service or get the cremated remains after. Typically, it's not something that you can say, oh, unclaimed, so somebody else will pay for it, and then you step in and want to then take care of the person. That's not how it works, unfortunately. It doesn't. So you'll have to check with your social worker, like I said, to know the exact rules. It's good to know ahead of time. If a death is imminent and you know it's coming, and you know that the person was on aid and that you want to try and apply for benefits, then get the paperwork ahead of time to get it filled out, because it's usually a 10 to 15 page form, and it's a lot of financials. You need to fill out a lot of information about everything that the person had assets wise, everything they've spent over the last sometimes years that they've had, to make sure that you haven't all of a sudden just gotten rid of funds so that you could apply for some aid. So they do some back checking. It's not, it's not their first time doing this where someone says, ooh, well, we're just going to give away all the money a week before the person dies and then we're going to claim we have none. It's been done. They've figured out how to, watch over that process better. So it's all about what that person had over the last months or years of their life, not just the last day. You will have to pay something, most likely, like I said. You'll have to go to the office to meet with a social worker to get this paperwork filled out. And to do that, you also have to have a contract from a funeral home. Now, you have to find a funeral home that accepts the state funding as a payment, because many do not anymore, because it's essentially writing off a funeral, because there is no state that I've seen where you actually are taking in enough money to cover the money that you're paying out as the funeral home. So you are doing it for free or paying for this person to be buried. And many funeral homes cannot financially support doing that. Sometimes they can, and they still take those, that method of payment, but a lot of times it doesn't balance out where they can't do that. They've just have too long a history of taking financial hits as a business because of those type of things. And I know that sounds horrible, and I'm sure I'll get some negative comments on it, but that's just the reality of what it is. The state will have the say in the casket and in the vault, and many times in the cemetery. So it's not always that you can walk in and say, oh, I want this financial aid to have the type of service you want. It doesn't work like that. They have over the years realized that people are overspending and overusing their funds, or they have additional funds and they to make a service the way they want it, but then they want the state funding as well. So you can't have it both ways. The state's going to dictate what happens oftentimes. The time of day even may be dictated, but definitely the type of service and what you're going to have done is dictated in it. And you can also then not spend outside of that. You can't then go run an obituary later. You can't then have a memorial service later on your own terms. You can't have a luncheon later on your own terms, because if any of that is found out, they will come back and they will expect you to repay them that money, because if you had additional funds to have a memorial service or to have a luncheon, then you had funds to pay the funeral home. So they will come back around and find that money from you and take it back. The cemetery and the vault company also have to be on board with this payment. So they make a 3-part payment. They pay a little bit to the funeral home, a little bit to the cemetery, and a little bit to the vault company. So the cemetery has to then also take a large pay decrease in order to facilitate the burial. And so they have to be on board with that and say that they will accept that payment from the state. And there's a lot that will not. So that's why I say there's pauper cemeteries, or there's cemeteries who have allocated certain spaces for burials of state-funded funerals. Vault companies, you're also going to have a hard time, because we run into vault companies that don't accept this form of payment for the vault, where you have a $900 vault and they're going to receive $100 for their time, their manpower, and the vault. It doesn't balance out, and it's not a good business decision for them to do that. Just fueling that truck alone is probably more than what they're going to receive from the state. So for all these businesses that are going to take part in doing this service, they're all basically paying to take care of this person who deserves being taken care of, but also that business has to keep moving and has to also keep going. So you get this balance it's not balanced. It's just not balanced. So it is hard. So let's say Colorado. So the family would pay about $1,500 and the state will pay about $1,000 for a direct burial or cremation at a cemetery who allows this. So the family then has to show that they're giving $1,500. Then Colorado will send the funeral home $1,000, and that $2,500 has to cover all of it. The cemetery, the vault, the casket, funeral home, everybody. And that's for a direct burial, which means no visitation, no viewing, no graveside service, anything. New Jersey varies by county, but some offer about $2,200 and the family must pay $1,550. However, many cemeteries don't allow this payment. So you actually have to find a cemetery that allows that payment. In New Jersey, there are some counties where you can do a letter. So you can write a letter stating what your situation is, the dire need of, the financials, and you can submit it and see if they will help with assistance that way. Kansas has no state aid, so there's nothing. There's no state-funded funerals in Kansas. Michigan, the state will allow a minimal amount to the funeral home, and the family must contribute up to a certain amount as well. Currently, it's just over about $700 to the funeral home for the casket, the cemetery, and the vault. So every penny that the deceased has, though, counts against that money. So let's say it's $700 even, which it's not, but let's say it's $700 even. If the deceased has $5 in a bank account, like let's say at the nursing home, the state will then only give $695. So every penny that the deceased has in account somewhere is considered an asset, and that counts against that $700 that they would pay. See, New Mexico will provide around $200 when a person meets specific needs. Alabama is by county and may give around $500 in some counties. But like I had said, no obituary is allowed to be run. If there's money towards anything else, then they will come back and take it. It sounds like such a strict, almost mean setup, but it's not. There's limited funds that states provide, if any, like Kansas, where they don't have any. There's such limited funds that, they give this nominal amount, and the family still has to come up with a lot. It's still a lot of money that the family has to come up with, even if it's $500 to $1,000. I know that there are some families that cannot afford even $1,000 to take care of and bury somebody. So, yes, what do we do in those situations? When you want to bury someone, when you want to have a service for them because you care for them and you love them, and there is literally no finances there, and direct cremation seems to be your only option because that's the lowest price service you can get, and you go to a low budget cremation place for that because that's what you can maybe afford. I wish there was a great answer for it, and there's not. You have to price out what you can find. If you truly are in need, then talk to some different funeral homes and see what they can maybe work out with you. Because funeral directors, if they know you are truly in need and not just not wanting to spend money, because I think that's a lot of what I have encountered is people saying, well, I really don't have money, but they do have the money in the end. They just don't want to spend it at the funeral home, which, sure, that's not a fun place to spend money that you do have. But if you are truly in need, that you truly don't have anything, somebody will work with you. But don't bite the hand that feeds you, because if they give you something and kind of, meet you halfway or give you a discount or something, and then they find out that you have taken advantage of that, you're never going to get that from them again. So then when you come back around and need to bury somebody else, it's not going to happen. They're not going to give you any wiggle room there. And funeral directors talk. Funeral directors in neighboring towns talk. So if you've burned one funeral director, the other funeral director in the neighboring town is probably going to know about it, because they talk when families are going to do these things. Because it's not fair for one family to pay a full price and another family to come along and not pay their bill or be given some kind of a discount and then it be taken advantage of, and they really have the money, they just aren't paying the funeral home. So because if any business, if you're shorting the business, then that business is having to compensate somewhere else, because the dollar amounts that are charged are based on something. They're based on an overhead to keep that business. You know, these numbers are what keep the business going, what allow us to serve 24/7 to families. And so if a family truly is in need, we want to help them, because that is what our position is. We are caregivers, and we take care of the deceased when it needs to happen. But we also need to keep our business open so we can do that. So it is this fine line, this business versus caretaker, that we have to walk down, the middle and do both, or else we can't do either. So that's some DHS information, or our state-funded funeral, or indigent funeral as sometimes it's referred to, and then unclaimed bodies, and then a little just overview for you. But we are going to have more financials coming this week, and of course, if you like what you hear, subscribe, and I will talk to you guys soon. Bye.